If you're comfortable begging, pleading, and explaining your worth to people who don't respect you, then stop watching right now. This video isn't for you, but if you're sick of chasing happiness, tired of defending yourself, and ready to finally command respect, then listen closely. In the next few minutes, we won't feed you fluffy quotes or empty motivation. We're going to hand you a Stoic framework, real, honest, and practical, that will help you reclaim your dignity and become someone who no longer asks for respect, but commands it. The truth is, most people spend their lives in chains they put on themselves. They beg for attention, they plead for validation, they explain their every move as if they're standing on trial. And the worst part, they call it love, they call it loyalty, they even call it strength. But in reality, it's weakness disguised as effort. It's noise disguised as courage. A Stoic sees this for what it really is, a quiet surrender of power. You've probably felt it yourself. You send the extra text. You write the long explanation. You replay conversations in your head, trying to fix what went wrong. But here's the hard truth. Every time you do that, you're not fixing anything. You're leaking power. Because the more you try to prove yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you, the more you make their opinion your prison. Okay, since we already got rid of the people who were not comfortable with confronting this harsh truth, let's talk about the first step. Detachment through silence. Not silence as avoidance, not silence as coldness, but silence as discipline, the refusal to waste your voice where it won't be heard. Silence isn't emptiness, it's a weapon. Most people don't realize this until it's too late. They think strength is loud, emotional, reactive. But real strength is measured in what you don't say. Imagine someone insults you, disrespects you, or even abandons you. The average person panics. They lash out, they explain, they fight to be seen. The Stoic doesn't. He lets silence do the talking, because silence forces the other person to face their own behavior without your words to cushion their guilt. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." And silence is the clearest way to show it. When you withhold reaction, you're not running away. You're stepping above. You're saying without words, your chaos is not mine to carry. And that terrifies people, because when you refuse to react, you rob them of control. But here's the deeper truth most people never see. Silence is only the surface. Underneath it lies something even stronger. Detachment. Because silence without detachment is just holding your tongue. True power comes when you stop needing their approval altogether. Most people confuse attachment with love. They think clinging means caring. They think explaining means connection. They think chasing means courage. But let me ask you, if your peace depends on someone else's reaction, is that really love, or is it slavery? The Stoics knew this centuries ago. Epictetus warned, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." Every time you chase someone's approval, you're handing them the keys to your own mind. You're saying, "My peace exists only if you choose to give it to me." And that's not peace, that's prison. A Stoic doesn't beg for freedom, he chooses it, and that choice begins with detachment. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to stop bleeding energy where it's wasted. Think about the last time someone pulled away from you, ignored your call, dismissed your effort, doubted your worth. Did explaining yourself fix it? Did pouring out your soul change their mind? Or did it only drain you further? That's the paradox. The more you chase, the further they run. But the moment you detach, the moment you walk away without anger, without begging, without explanation, You take back every ounce of power you gave away. Here's the question you need to wrestle with. If silence unsettles them and detachment scares them, why do you keep handing them your chains? And here's where it gets interesting. The second you stop chasing, they start wondering. The second you go silent, they start talking, because detachment doesn't just free you, it exposes them. And when you're no longer performing for their approval, they're forced to face something most people run from, their own emptiness. Silence terrifies people because it breaks the script. They expected you to fight back, to beg, to argue, to explain. And when you don't, when you give them nothing, they're left with the only voice left in the room, their own. That's why people fear silence. It's not your lack of words that hurts them. It's the way it magnifies their own. Think about it. When someone insults you, they want your anger. When someone ghosts you, they want your panic. When someone doubts you, they want your explanations. But if you give them silence instead, suddenly the control flips. They can't feed off your reaction. They can't escape into your words. And that makes them uneasy, because deep down, they realize the performance is over. Marcus Aurelius also said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And nothing proves that power more than silence, because silence says, "I don't need to win this argument. I don't need to convince you. I don't even need you to see my worth." Silence says, "I already know who I am." And that's a truth most people can't handle. And here's where I want you to pause for a second. If this already resonates with you, don't just keep it in your head. Type this in the comments right now. My silence is my strength. Because the act of declaring it makes it real. It's not just a phrase, it's a commitment. Now that you've claimed it, let's move from the philosophy to the practice. Because knowing silence is powerful is one thing, but living it, using it in the heat of rejection, conflict, or disrespect, that's where everything changes. Let's take a look at some real-world scenarios that you may be familiar with. Picture this. You text someone, they don't reply. Hours pass, maybe days. Most people spiral, double text, pour out long explanations, beg to be seen. But the Stoic doesn't. He lets the silence speak for him. Why? Because silence communicates self-respect louder than words ever could. If someone's interest dies the second you stop performing, that's not love. It's dependency. And better to see that truth now than waste months explaining yourself into exhaustion. My suggestion for dealing with someone who doesn't text back: put down the phone and do one of the countless tasks that you've been telling yourself that you don't have time for. This will allow you to be productive while maintaining your composure. Now shift to another scene. You're at work in yet another meeting. Someone criticizes your idea unfairly, maybe even mocks it. Your instinct? Defend, argue, fire back with proof. But here's the Stoic way. You pause. You let silence hang in the air for a few seconds. That pause is unsettling. It forces the room to think. Then, when you do respond, you choose calm, deliberate words. Not to defend your ego, but to refocus on the solution. The silence isn't weakness, it's authority. It makes your voice carry more weight when you finally choose to use it. The next time someone pulls something like that with you, here's what I want you to do. Maintain eye contact and pause for 3 full seconds. This will give you and everyone else time to carefully consider the situation. Many times you will find that the person criticizing you will backpedal and question themselves. When you respond with either something very matter-of-fact or with a respectful question about their understanding of the topic. Okay, time for the last scenario. Let's talk about the closest relationships, the ones that trigger us the most. A sibling, a parent, a friend. They say something disrespectful. You feel the fire rising, the urge to clap back, to explain, to justify. But instead, you breathe. You remain calm. You let the silence stretch. Because silence isn't retreat. It's setting a boundary without saying a word. And here's the thing. The people who truly love you will feel that boundary and respect it. The ones who don't, they'll try harder to provoke you. That's how you know who actually deserves your energy. You might be surprised by how often the other person will be thrown off guard when you simply remain quiet and stay standing tall. Even if the confidence is fake at first, eventually you will embrace the silence and feel the freedom of not always responding. This is the paradox of silence. It speaks volumes. It clarifies who's with you and who's against you. It filters out manipulation, disrespect, and games without you wasting a single word. And that's why the next step isn't just practicing silence, it's learning to weaponize absence. Because sometimes your absence screams louder than your presence ever could. Absence is the sharp edge of silence. It's not just choosing not to speak, it's choosing not to even show up. Most people fear absence because they think it means being forgotten. But here's the paradox. When used wisely, absence makes you unforgettable. Think about it. When you argue, when you chase, when you explain, you're present but powerless. But when you step back, when you remove your energy, your attention, your presence, you create space. And in that space, people feel the weight of losing access to you. They replay the conversations. They notice the silence. They sense the gap where your energy used to be. And suddenly, your absence has more gravity than your words ever did. Consider this. In dating, the person who can walk away without anger is the one who commands respect. In business, the leader who doesn't attend every fight but steps back strategically becomes the one everyone waits for. In family conflict, your absence from drama speaks louder than shouting ever could, because absence makes people wrestle with themselves, and most people can't win that fight. But here's the danger. Absence only works when it's backed by true self-respect. If you pull away just to manipulate, people will feel the game and ignore it. Real power comes when you can walk away without fear. And that's where the deepest Stoic lesson lives. You only gain control when you stop trying to control. And that begs the question, if you can't control others, what can you control? The answer is painfully simple. Yourself, your emotions, your reactions, your choices, your mind. Remember that Marcus Aurelius quote we talked about earlier? You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the heart of Stoicism. Not silence for silence's sake, not detachment as a trick, but silence and detachment as tools to master you. Because the man who controls himself cannot be controlled by anyone else. Think about how most people live. Their emotions are remote controlled by others. One text ruins their day. One insult wrecks their confidence. One rejection destroys their self-worth. They live like puppets, strings pulled by the opinions of others. But the Stoic cuts those strings. He reclaims the only thing that ever truly belonged to him, his response. This doesn't mean you won't feel anger, sadness, or fear. The Stoic feels everything. He just refuses to be enslaved by it. Anger may rise, but it doesn't dictate his next move. Fear may whisper, but it doesn't steer the ship. Rejection may sting, but it doesn't define his worth. That's the kind of strength silence, detachment, and absence were always pointing toward. The strength of mastering yourself. And here's the paradox. The moment you master yourself, You don't need to control anyone else. But, ironically, that's the very moment others start respecting you most. Because respect isn't something you chase, it's something that radiates from within. Which brings us to the final transformation, turning Stoic self-control into a presence so powerful it demands respect without a single word. And here's the interesting result of strengthening your mind. The moment you master yourself, you don't need to control anyone else. But ironically, that's the very moment others start respecting you most. Because respect isn't something you chase, it's something that radiates from within. Think about it. When you walk into a room desperate to be liked, people sense it instantly. Your energy says, "Please choose me." And that energy repels respect. But when you enter with calm, steady presence, no need to prove, no need to perform, people can't help but notice. Because confidence is loud, but true self-respect is silent. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus never begged emperors for approval, yet they quoted him. Marcus Aurelius ruled not by shouting, but by writing words that still echo centuries later. Respect doesn't come from noise. It comes from alignment. When your actions, your silence, and your presence match your values, you command attention without asking for it. In dating, this is why the man who doesn't chase becomes magnetic. In business, this is why the calm voice in chaos becomes the leader. In friendships, this is why the one who doesn't explain themselves endlessly becomes the one people trust. Respect isn't given to the loudest. It's given to the one who doesn't need it. And that's the ultimate Stoic transformation. You stop begging, you stop chasing, you stop explaining, and in that silence, in that absence, in that mastery of yourself, you rise into the kind of person who commands respect simply by existing. But here's the final shift most people miss. The Stoic doesn't just win respect, he wins something even more important: peace. All right, stick with me as we move into the final few points. If you've made it this far, I think it's safe to say that you gained something from this video. So I would like to ask you to hit the like button and maybe subscribe, but only if you like this type of practical wisdom. Okay, let's close it down. You've stopped begging, you've stopped chasing, you've stopped explaining, and in that silence, in that absence, in that mastery of yourself, you rise into the kind of person who commands respect simply by existing. But respect is not the end. There's something greater, something most people spend their entire lives searching for and never find: peace. The Stoics lived through storms we can barely imagine: exile, betrayal, poverty, death. And yet, they found peace, not because the storms vanished, but because they stopped trying to control the sea. They learned to control the only vessel they ever truly owned, their own mind. Zeno lost his fortune in a shipwreck. That disaster gave birth to Stoicism itself. Epictetus was born a slave, beaten so severely he limped for life, and yet his words taught emperors how to rule. Marcus Aurelius carried the weight of Rome on his shoulders through plague and war, and still found the time to write words like, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And here's the truth most people don't want to face. Your life will have storms too. People will betray you, they'll walk away, they'll doubt you, you'll lose things you thought you couldn't live without. But the measure of your life will not be what you lost, it will be how you responded. And if you carry the Stoic frame, silence, absence, self-mastery, you'll realize the world cannot take from you what it never gave: your peace. Imagine it, walking through life unshaken. People try to provoke you, but your silence swallows their chaos. They try to pull you into their storms, but your absence leaves them to drown in their own noise. They try to control you, but your self-mastery makes you untouchable. That's not weakness. That's not avoidance. That is real strength, the kind the world cannot break. So the final gift of Stoicism isn't just commanding respect, it's commanding yourself. It's walking into every storm with calm in your chest and clarity in your mind. Because when you no longer beg, chase, or explain, you no longer live as a prisoner, you live as someone free. So stop begging, stop chasing, stop explaining, because every time you do, you hand your power to someone else. The world doesn't need another person desperate to be understood. It needs more people unshaken, unbothered, and untouchable. Silence isn't emptiness. Absence isn't weakness. Self-mastery isn't coldness. They are the marks of someone who finally understands. You don't need respect to be powerful. You don't need approval to be free. You don't need to speak to be heard. And you sure as hell don't need their approval to be unshakable.